If you are new to Smite and like the Hunter class but don't know who to play or where to start, I'm going to be going over the top 3 Hunters for beginners. What's up guys, I'm Kitten of Doom, and if this is your first time here and you want to learn how to play Smite, learn about certain gods as well as some tips and tricks, then you are in the right place. If you find this video helpful and want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. The first god we are going to be covering is Neith, and she is an Egyptian hunter. She is actually one of the 5 free gods you will get once you start playing the game, and she is the free hunter, and she is basically almost like the poster child of Smite for beginners. She is super easy to understand, and she can be really good and do a lot of damage. So we are going to be going over some pros and cons with her. As for some pros, Neith has amazing ability damage, has lots of crowd control built into her kit, has great wave clear, has an escape, has global presence with her ultimate and can clean up kills and help her team secure kills all over the map, has high sustain, and can have a lot of versatility in her builds. As for some cons, her ultimate can be body blocked by other enemy teammates. Her escape can be countered and is predictable at times. It can be extremely countered by gods like Awilix or any other gods that can cripple you out of your escape. And her late game isn't the strongest, so she can be overshadowed by some other late game hunters. And to give you an overview on Neith's abilities, her passive really works well with her entire kit and actually synergizes with it. And basically her passive just leaves a weave on the ground at the last location that each enemy god dies. And this weave gives her abilities secondary effects when used on these weaves. And they last for about a minute, and we'll talk about what these weaves do. Her first ability is a line attack that passes through everything it hits. So each enemy hit takes damage and is rooted, and if this arrow hits a broken weave from her passive, the weave detonates, dealing additional damage and applies root to the whole area of that weave. This ability is Neith's bread and butter. It is super good at wave clearing and does a ton of damage when you hit it on enemy gods. And when you hit this ability with your weave, it can be really devastating for the enemy team since it does a lot of damage and roots all of them in that area. Her second ability is a big circle, and it damages all enemies in that area, also reducing their attack speed while it increases her own attack speed. And it also heals Neith for each enemy hit up to 3. And any broken weaves in this area are removed, and it heals Neith for an additional amount. So this is why she has really high sustain. She doesn't need to build lifesteal all the time. She could just place this down on some enemy minions or enemy gods, and she can heal for that amount. And it also helps her box other people in lane since it reduces their attack speed. Her third ability is her escape, and she backflips through the air and she creates a broken weave at the area that she leaped from. So this is her main way of creating weaves other than just having enemy gods die. And in front of her, while she leaps, she damages and slows enemies. They recently changed this ability so that she's a lot faster while backflipping through the air, so it can be a little bit less hard to predict, and her backflip has some really fun mechanics where you can just backflip and immediately throw out your 1 so that you can apply that explosion damage of that weave. And also, if you don't have any more abilities up, you can also just backflip someone to get that last tiny bit of damage off to kill them. And her ultimate is super fun. She charges up an arrow and she can fire it across the whole map. It seeks a target through obstacles, through walls, and enemy gods take damage and are stunned when they're hit by this arrow. The arrow can be fired quicker, but you lose damage if you don't charge it all the way. This is what really makes her impactful through all stages of the game, just because she can help her teammates set up kills or even finish off kills. If your team didn't quite do enough damage to finish off a kill, she can just seek them out and ult them across the map, and it's always a super helpful ultimate for her team. Her ult does a ton of damage, so even if you are behind or not doing so well in that game, her ult can always be useful no matter what, even if it's just to set up kills, or you can get a little bit more ahead if you somehow find that last hit so that you can get that extra golden experience from that kill. Overall, Neith is really fun to play, easy to understand, and can actually do a lot of damage, and if you haven't played her yet, I highly recommend her. And next up we have Medusa, and she is a Greek hunter, and she's actually one of my favorite hunters. She's probably my second favorite hunter after Scotty. Super fun to play, and she is pretty good for beginners. Some pros about Medusa is that she has very high burst damage, has a stun and root in her kit, has good poke damage, strafes without penalty, so she can dodge abilities and walk backwards quicker than any other god because of her passive. She can reduce enemy healing. She has a really good teamfight ultimate and can surprise a lot of enemies with it. And she has a dash. Some cons about Medusa is her ultimate is easy to counter with actives. It can be countered by actives like beads, and also can be countered if a god quickly looks away from her so they won't be stunned. Her dash can be body blocked. She is mana hungry early game, and like all hunters, she is squishy and has low defense. For Medusa's passive, she suffers no movement penalty when side strafing, and half of the movement penalty when moving backwards. And she is the only god in the game that can do this, so she can dodge a little bit better with this passive, and it's just a nice, really good addition to her, and it makes a lot of sense for her. For Medusa's first ability, she gains increased attack speed with her basics, and they become augmented, shooting vipers that poison the targets, and they deal damage over time. This ability is really great to poke down enemies. She can really burst down people with her viper shots. She used to have 3, but now she has 4, and it really synergizes well after she ults someone once they are stunned to just put 4 viper shots into them, and it does a ton of damage. This ability is also really useful when shredding down objectives like Gold Fury, Fire Giant, and the Pyromancer. She can save her viper shots for when it's slow, just to help burst it down quicker. For Medusa's second ability, she spits out acid that damages the first enemy hit, and this also has a cone at the end of it, so it also sprays out in the cone behind the initial line. And this is Medusa's main wave clearing ability, and just a straightforward damage ability, and there's not really much more to it. And her third ability, she slithers forward, rooting and slashing the first enemy god she hits, and also once she slashes them, it reduces their healing for a short time. And what I really like doing with this ability is either using it as an escape, or after I ult someone, I immediately dash them to get that anti-heal on them, get that extra damage on them, and then follow up with my acid spray and viper shots. And if you're able to hit pretty much all of her abilities after you stun them, you should be able to get a really clean kill. The only bad thing about her dash is that enemies can body block this, so if they're in front of you, you really need to try and go around them so that your dash doesn't encounter them, and then you will be stuck and possibly die if you're caught out. And for her ultimate, she removes her mask and delivers a really powerful cone blast. And enemies take damage and are stunned if they are looking at Medusa. If enemies are not looking at Medusa, they take 75% damage and are slowed. And if enemy gods are killed when she uses her ultimate, she turns them into a stone statue. Her ultimate is super great in teamfights just because you can go around a corner and catch a lot of the enemy team off guard, and they will be just looking straight into you, and you will be able to stun multiple enemies at a time if they're looking at you. And it's just a major damage dealer, and you and your team can just follow up right after it. Only bad thing, like I said before, is it can just be countered with beads, and if they have really quick reflexes to turn around their view so that they don't get stunned. Overall, Medusa is really fun. Her abilities are easy to hit, and she is one of the top gods that I gravitated towards when I was a beginner, so I really hope you guys enjoy her as well. And the last hunter we are going to be talking about is Hachiman, and he is a Japanese hunter. Some pros of Hachiman is that he has a good early and late game. He has an attack speed buff for himself and his team. Has mana regeneration, so he doesn't need to worry about mana very often. Has safe poke damage. Has high mobility, and has long range. And for a couple cons, Hachiman is very high risk, high reward, since you need to dash in for some kills, and since you need to dash at the enemy to get them stunned. You can sometimes miss his 3 and end up dying since you don't have a way out if your ultimate is down. His ultimate can be blocked by walls, so you just need to be careful on when to use it and try using it in an open area and not trying to turn to follow someone around a corner. And Hachiman needs a lot of accuracy to hit his ult and his first ability. Overall, Hachiman is pretty straightforward, and his first ability, he toggles on, and instead of basic attacks, he fires a series of arrows that does additional damage. And they also are a lot longer range than normal auto attacks. When you level up this ability, he just gets more arrows, up to 4 arrows at a time. This ability can be used pretty well to poke the enemy team, especially if someone's running away. It does a lot of good damage if you can get all of these shots off. So this is where his accuracy comes in. If you are able to hit all 4 of the autos, you'll be able to do a lot of good damage. In Hachiman's second ability, he calls down a banner that damages all enemies in its range, and it grants himself and his team an attack speed buff. And this is really good for poke damage as well, just because it's really hard to dodge this ability. It just comes out of the sky and you don't really have a chance to react to it. Can be pretty good wave clear since he can just put it down on the minions and gives him a little bit more autos to get in to kill more minions. So pretty solid ability for him and really good damage early and late game. His third ability is a short dash, and this dash passes through enemies and he swings his blade in a circle. And if he hits a certain area within this dash, he actually stuns the enemy that's in a specific line. So this can come in handy a lot when you want to aggress on an enemy. The only bad thing about it is you are using your dash, so if you do dash in on an enemy and it doesn't go your way, you are going to be caught off guard a little bit and might possibly die with your dash down. It's also not the longest dash, it's a pretty short dash. It does do some good damage if you are willing to go on to someone with it. And for Hachiman's ultimate, he leaps onto his horse and charges forward. While he is mounted, he is completely crowd control immune and can aim in certain directions off of his horse. And this ability also slows when it hits other gods. This ultimate is really great at finishing off kills. It can be good for engaging in certain fights, does a lot of damage, and it is another escape option for him if he's not able to get away with his dash. So overall, it's pretty fun to use. It's a little hard to get used to at first with how to steer it, and you do want to be careful, like I said earlier, on walls because it doesn't go through walls, so if an enemy escapes and goes around a corner, it will not hit them. It's always super fun to get the last hits with his ultimate since it's almost like a heat-seeking missile in a way if you can get them in that cone area. And it's good that his ultimate has a little bit of utility, just with him being able to escape and the slow. And lastly, his passive is pretty simple. When he hits enemies with basic attacks, it energizes him and grants him stacks of MP5, and that can last 8 seconds, so he really doesn't ever need to worry about mana costs, and he's pretty much never out of mana with this passive. So if you're looking for a little bit more of an auto attack hunter you want to start learning, I would really recommend Hachiman. He's a good mix of an auto attack and ability based hunter, and he is really fun to play. And that is going to wrap up this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what hunters helped you learn when you were a beginner and what hunters you enjoyed playing. There are a couple other ones that are some great options, so I'm really interested to hear them. In the next video, I will be going over the top 3 guardians for beginners, so keep an eye out on that, and then we will finish off later with assassins and warriors. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in that next video.